All right, let's dive straight in. Today, we're unpacking a really pivotal policy document from July 2026 called Open Weights and American AI Leadership. This is a fascinating paper because it outlines a high-stakes debate happening right now about the very future of artificial intelligence. It basically argues that how we choose to govern AI today isn't just going to determine who has the coolest tech, but it's going to dictate the economic prosperity of the entire country. So here's our roadmap for the breakdown today. 1. The open source parallel. 2. Defining open weights. 3. Fueling the AI economy. 4. Security through transparency. And finally, 5. The path forward. Starting with Section 1, the open source parallel, learning from the 1980s. To really grasp the current AI landscape, the authors argue we've got to rewind the clock to a massive technological shift from the 80s. The source material draws this direct parallel between the early fight for open software code and today's battle over AI. See, back in the 1980s, the prevailing mindset was that software would only advance if companies kept a total iron grip on their code. But early pioneers challenged that. They pushed for a transparent ecosystem where developers everywhere could actually study and modify the work. Fast forward to today, and open source software literally runs most of the internet. It's wild to think that open source was once famously called a cancer by some early tech execs, but today, it is the absolute bedrock underlying systems used by our largest tech companies, the US military, and federal cybersecurity teams. The authors are putting out that open source didn't just make things cheaper, it became the shared foundation of modern American innovation. Moving on to Section 2, defining open weights. What does it actually mean? Now, you might be wondering, what exactly are open weights? Well, the document defines open weight models as AI models that anyone can fundamentally download, inspect, modify, and run entirely on their own infrastructure. So instead of locking the incredibly powerful underlying tech away in a black box or keeping it tightly controlled by a single megacorporation, open weights make advanced AI completely accessible. It lets developers, researchers, and regular businesses look under the hood. They can tinker with it and adapt the model for their specific needs, completely independently. It's really about taking this transformative technology and turning it into a widely available resource rather than a heavily guarded secret. Which brings us to Section 3, fueling the AI economy. Cost, competition, and control. The authors make a super compelling case that open weights are absolutely crucial for economic sustainability. I mean, think about it. If you're a startup, a local public school, or a regional hospital, you probably don't have the budget to build a complex AI model from scratch. And you definitely don't want to pay absolute top dollar for a massive generalized frontier model just to automate a basic task. Open weights allow these everyday organizations to match a highly efficient, specialized model to the exact job they need done. By skipping the huge overhead of massive models for every little thing, the paper argues we can sustainably inject AI into billions of everyday workflows, literally everything from the factory floor to Main Street businesses. And this is fundamentally about preventing monopolies. The coalition stresses that open weights are a massive driver for market competition. Because anyone can deploy these models, it sparks intense rivalry, not just between AI developers, but across cloud providers, chip makers, and app creators. But the real kicker here is control. When organizations invest heavily in AI, their biggest nightmare is vendor lock-in, getting trapped with one single provider and losing all their tech capabilities if they ever try to leave. Open weights theoretically solve this completely. They let organizations deploy models wherever they want, keep strict ownership of their own sensitive data, and build self-improving models that they actually own outright. The document calls this maintaining institutional sovereignty, which is a pretty powerful concept. Let's look at Section 4, security through transparency. Addressing the risks. Now, this part neutrally lays out a really fascinating, almost counterintuitive argument about cybersecurity. It acknowledges, yes, once open weights are out there in the wild, they are beyond the original developer's control. But it argues that relying solely on closed models isn't inherently safe either. Closed models can get breached or have hidden flaws that outsiders literally can't detect, which creates these massive single points of failure. If all our critical tech is controlled by 3 or 4 companies, a single unseen flaw could be catastrophic. Open models, on the flip side, mean a global community of thousands of researchers can rigorously test them, red team them, and patch vulnerabilities at lightning speed. Plus, the authors make the point that if cyber attackers are out there using advanced AI, defenders absolutely need access to open models with the exact same capabilities just to keep up. It's the classic debate, security by obscurity versus security through transparency. And finally, Section 5, the path forward, policy and the players. What is truly striking about this document is the sheer weight of the folks backing it. This push for open weights is supported by some of the most influential, deep-pocketed tech giants on the planet. including major industry heavyweights like Meta and Microsoft. But it's not just the legacy giants. We're also seeing dedicated AI pioneers, companies like Hugging Face and Mistral. These are businesses that have essentially built their entire identity and massive communities around open ecosystems from day one. And amazingly, it even features veteran organizations like the Linux Foundation. Having them on board is huge because it draws a direct, undeniable line right back to that original open source software movement from the 80s and 90s that we just talked about. They are basically signaling that they view OpenAI weights as the exact same kind of historical turning point. So what is this massive coalition actually asking for? Well, they've laid out 4 key recommendations for policymakers to secure American leadership in this space. First, expand access to computing power for startups and researchers so the little guys can compete. Second, invest in shared public training assets like datasets and evaluation frameworks. Third, and they are very emphatic about this, they urge policymakers to avoid premature, sweeping restrictions on open models, warning that overregulation could just drive all the innovation overseas. And lastly, they're asking policymakers to formally recognize a technique called model distillation, which is basically using one model's outputs to help train another as a totally legitimate traditional method of innovation, rather than unlawful extraction. Which brings us to this final, really provocative question. The document insists that a thriving AI ecosystem isn't just going to happen on its own. It requires active choices today. So, will the future of our economic prosperity and innovation rely on keeping these systems open, transparent, and accessible to everyone? Or will the foundational tech of the next century be locked behind closed doors? The choices policymakers make right now about AI accessibility are likely going to define our technological sovereignty for decades to come. It's an incredible debate, and for sure, one we are all going to need to watch very closely.